All right, let's get these vocals in now. And because these are like, I don't know, not the performances, like these aren't the verses and all the way, it's just kind of the end of the song. Let's go where a lot of lyrics is being sung, is what I'm trying to say. I want to turn on my de-esser first. Not that we need it, but
you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break. You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will. You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain.
why isn't... Hold up. We are in the mix view and we need to turn on. Wait. Sends. Am I bugging? Insert. Oh, edit. I'm tripping. I was like, huh? There we go. I was like, why isn't my sends all the way on? And here. Boom.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will. You don't love me now.
There's a lot of this that I'm hearing.
You will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still. You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now.
So sometimes I do like to start without effects instead of just reaching for delays and reverbs, because I think it's important to get the tone and shape first, because obviously that's what you're going to be feeding into your reverbs and delays. And sometimes if you're feeding them the incorrect or not corrected frequency and compression and all that, I just feel like you'll second guess your effects a lot more. So it's like just trying to feed them the best result as possible, and then you won't have to use as less, and you might not even... It also keeps you from, or keeps me at least from, having to adjust my effects as much as possible and trying to shape my effects around an unshaped vocal, if that makes sense. And that goes for anything, but specifically vocals. That's the best way I can think about it. Yeah, it's just like trying to reshape my vocals for my vocals that aren't already shaped. So let me send them the correct shaped stuff, and then I can just throw on reverb and delay and kind of call it a day in a way.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain.
Okay.
Still hear you saying you
we go.
Still hear you say you don't love me now. You will never love me again.
So
I can still.
not using as much compression as I would typically use on the
You
silver,
don't love me now.
just because those her breaths are coming out a lot, and they weren't really edited out. But not necessarily saying that you need to edit those things out, because sometimes that adds to the track and it adds to the emotion. So you don't necessarily need to always take breaths out, but sometimes you need to control them. But not really trying to do all that, just because this is kind of for fun. But so I'm just not going to add as much compression. I'll try to get the compression sound that I'm looking for in other places, if that makes sense.
You don't love me now. You will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never. You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now, I can still
So here's before.
hear you saying you don't love me now. You will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now.
So, definitely you can tell that I have a little bit more of a pop ear, I guess, when it comes to vocals. So, maybe necessarily doesn't fit this style of track or anything like that, but just doing what I usually do and try to, just kind of do my thing. Because at the end of the day, they're always, the artists and band is always going to come back with you with things they don't like. So it's like, if I can get and do what I think sounds good to me and what I think sounds right and fits the track, then I know that we have a solid starting point, and we can go back and start tweaking things or whatever.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying.
All right, so now at this point, because these are more of my shaping plugins, and this is more of like my, I don't know, overall shine with these plugins and depth and all that stuff, I know that my shape is pretty much there for the most part. And these are things that I'll go back and tweak as I start messing with other stuff, but for the most part, I know generally this is what my lead vocal is, where I want it to sound. So now I'm going to start bringing in my effects.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain.
So here's dry,
If you don't
and I'll
love
slowly bring in effects. So mono, slap delay, quarter delay, half. I'm not using my Bricasti reverb, dimension D, and doubler.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still
Just getting that
hear
forwardness,
you saying you
depth
will
from the mono delay.
never break the chain. If you don't love me now,
And just a little bit of slap for that left and right, so that's stereo. And then I feel like with the combination of the mono and slap, you're almost getting a reverb already.
you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you.
Which, obviously, well, not obviously, but you know, that is pretty much what reverb is anyway. It's just a bunch of a shitload of delays, essentially.
You don't love me now, you will never love me.
And then this is even more stereo wideness and also our first, you know, effect that we're going for.
Never break the chain. If you don't love me now.
And then this is the Bricasti. Just using the sunset chamber, brought it down to a second. I think default is 3 seconds. And pre-delay, I set the 20. I think this was like a starting point for me. And that's pretty much it. And then I made sure to change the low cut on my preset starting point, whatever, to 300 because I don't want any of that woofiness from the reverb. And then I cut out a lot of top end just to make the reverb sound farther, because with it would just sound really bright and close.
You don't love me now, you will.
And then without it, it makes the reverb and whatever I'm sending through the reverb sound more pushed back.
You don't love me now.
Let me turn up the reverb so we can hear exactly, hopefully, what I mean.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break.
So just sounds a little bit more pushed back. And then another thing too, it keeps the S's from being sent to the reverb. Obviously not fully, but it just helps with that too. I just think when you, it's the same thing what I said earlier. If for instance, a good example is if I send something that's un-DS'd or where the S's aren't controlled and I send that to an effect or reverb, that S is also going to be more affected and stuff. So yeah, just like I said, just making sure that you're sending the correct shape, I guess, in this case, to your effects will go a long way, because then if not, everything that doesn't sound pleasant to the ear is also going to be affected as well. So you just got to make sure that you get all that stuff under control.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying.
And then these two just for more stereo, dimension D and doubler, like I said. And yeah, that's that. Pretty straightforward.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break.
I like the 50% on this, just more mid-range.
You don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. If you don't love me now, I can still hear you saying you will never break the chain. You don't love.
So I brought in everything pretty much, and I'm going to bring in this de-esser to get one more final part of de-essing. But I have this ensemble and air flanger. My screen might get messed up. So you know what? I think it will get messed up. Oh, it doesn't. Okay, cool. I guess that was a bug in the other Pro Tools, but Ensemble and Air Flanger, said this before. I got it from Alex Toomey. He just put on his vocals. He just felt like I think he said that it brought depth and stuff. At least that's what I think it does. I joke about this all the time. It might be just placebo at this effect, but they've never left my template since like whenever that was, like 2016, when he talked about it or whatever. And I don't know if he still uses it on his all vocal bus or whatever he had. But I haven't changed it, and I feel like it definitely does something. Now, does it do enough for me to justify to tell everybody to do this? Probably not, but it's always just little moves like this that I think just makes a huge difference. So I always keep it on. I've never changed any of these settings. I just copied and have always had the same settings that he was using. And yeah, and I think these are one of those things too. Like you can see the percentage is really low, and he explained it in his video too. It's a super old video. You could probably still find it. Anything past 5%, because these plugins are doing a lot. Anything under 5% is more than enough. Anything above it, it gets a little messy and actually starts sounding like the effect that it's meant to be, you know, flanger and ensemble and stuff. I brought in the Shadow Hills. I'm not doing any compression yet because, well, I guess in this case I don't have anything else. If I had a group, like let's say I decided to keep the doubles, the ad libs and stuff in this bus, then this would make a little bit more sense because I want to compress them overall the same at some point. Like I want them to feed into the same compressor at some point just for tone, because I think this box has a lot of tone, and just for the sake of keeping them together and close together as much as possible when they all react together and are being performed together. This does that for me, and I like using it a lot. And you know, it's a stereo compressor. You can use anything you want, but I like to use this. I think this one has more tone than the original mastering green version or whatever it's called. Just like the OG Shadow Hills. I think that one's like way too subtle for me. I think this has more of a sound, in my opinion. And I'm also using stereo width, so it would make a little bit more sense if I was using a bunch of grouped vocals. But for this case, I'm not. So yeah, that's that. But I guess I can go ahead and add a little bit more compression, because nothing else will really affect it. So just might as well add it. And I'm specifically only using the discrete section, not the optical. Everything is at 0. So this is, I feel like this is always a good amount for this compressor. Anything past 2 or close to 2 is too much, I think, in my opinion. I'm just going for something subtle, just a little bit more last minute control as well. And like I said, I'm making use of the stereo width a little bit. It's only at 5%, but a little goes a long way in my opinion. And I said in my last video, it's just little things like this that I feel like make a huge difference in separating signals in your mix and separating, you know, instruments in your mix, and also separating your mixes from other mixes, if that makes sense. And then the last thing is this Spectre Wave from Waves Factory. This is more of like my C800 U47 sound, because this is a saturation EQ and not necessarily an EQ. The way that it's boosting with saturation. So I'm using the tube for that upper mid range for the 5K, and then 16K and up, I'm just using the clean. So yeah, it's just a way to reshape your signal in a much nicer way, but with saturation and harmonics. So just adding a little bit more grit and top end and air to her vocal in this case. And then one final de-esser, because we're adding, you know, slowly adding some harmonics and top end and stuff in mid range. This is just another way of catching those other S's that are now poking out or being enhanced by all these moves over here. to focus on this section right here.
You don't love me now. I can stay. You don't
Oh my gosh, my trackball is like getting stuck.
still hear you say I can still, 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 I can still hear you say it.
There we
I
go.
can still.
Now, really, what I would do, because I know I don't even know how long this video is already. I think it's almost coming up on an hour. So, I would, go through and actually manually DS. So, like, I would go here, put this in slip mode, come here, break it, and maybe do like 5 dB to start with.
I can still hear.
Do that, and then maybe get some of this too.
I can still hear.
So now you can see it goes from that to this.
I can still. I can still. I can.
So more controlled, but that is something that I would do. But yeah, don't have time for that for this video. But just want to throw that out there. If you are still getting more S's, don't try to fully rely on one de-esser or even two in this case, but go in and manually de-ess, because it will sound more natural than you trying to force your de-esser to do something you can do by hand, if that makes sense.
And if you don't love me now, you will never.
All right, now let's go ahead and bring her doubles in, since we got her lead vocal for the most part done.
And if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break, never break.
And because we already know her S's, her style of S's, you can say we can bring her lead vocal DS and bring it down on her double.
And if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear.
And I feel like with doubles and BGVs and stuff that's going to be pushed in the back, you can kind of over DS with those, because you don't want too many DSs. Like, you don't, because she's not performing these exactly perfect, her S's are going to be slightly off. So you don't want to hear like an S and then like a millisecond later another S. Like, it's probably okay to, in my opinion, to go ahead and over DS them, not where it's too obvious, but enough where it doesn't get in the way of the S's of the lead vocal. Because when you have too many S's, then it starts getting really messy. So sometimes I think it's okay to over DS and just use the doubles to double it, because you're not using it to get more S.
You never love me again. I can still hear you saying you will never break, never break the chain. If you
It
don't
probably sounds a little crazy soloed, but
hear you saying, you hear you saying, if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, hear you saying, hear you saying, hear you saying.
so you can hear it's like super.
Never break the
Let's
chain.
go here too.
Chain, 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 chain.
So yeah, it's just like, I don't know, it just gets messier. So sometimes it's okay to over DS on those doubles a little bit. I would go in and be more particular for these, but just an overall, just showing you what I would do.
You don't love me
And
now.
kind of the same thing. You don't,
You don't love me now.
not using doubles for low
You'll
end.
never love me again.
So sometimes I will high
I
pass
can
these a lot.
still hear you saying you will never break the chain.
Just so that we know that there is doubles there. Sometimes I will push a frequency that I didn't push in the lead vocal, just so it has its own way of having its spotlight.
You don't love me now. You will never love me again. You don't love me now. You will never love me again.
Versus,
You don't love me now. You will never love me again. I
so
can
it's just finding the correct frequency that makes sense for the song. But in this case, I don't know, just chose whatever this is, 7.5. This is not usually a frequency I would specifically choose, but in this case, I'd be moving quickly and just kind of seeing like, all right, this works, this doesn't work, and that's it, and keep moving, and don't really need to overthink it. But generally, that's what I would probably do, something like that. Just push a frequency that I'm not pushing in the lead vocal, because then it will have its own space. And also, yeah, you're just giving its own unique position in the song to be like, hey, I'm still here, you know.
You don't love me now.
All right, now let's move on to Troy, because we've been listening to a lot of Cassie, right? That's her name.
And if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, never break the chain. And if you don't love me now.
Now him, we will high pass because we can hear the plosives coming out in the microphone.
And if you don't love, and if you don't love,
like, and if you don't, like,
and if you,
even on the
and
if you can hear it there too, like the super low end.
and if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, never break the chain.
Like break.
Break.
It's not like a noticeable plosive, but it's there. So we want to make sure that we take care of that bottom end a little bit. And he's singing up in the register and stuff. So I would say, you know, don't make him sound thin, but it's okay to maybe take a little bit more out than you probably usually would.
Break the chain. If you don't love me now, you'll never love me again. I can still hear you saying, you will never break the chain. Break the chain. If you don't love me now,
You don't love me
you'll
now.
never love me again.
So going back to, you know, I would have to listen to the song or like talk to the producer and the band and be like, okay, are we going for an even blend of your lead vocals? Is somebody getting a little bit more of the spotlight than the other person? So also, you know, those are questions that you would ask too and figure out, or they would let you know, and you would get like a reference track. So I'm bringing this up because I also need to decide who is going to be the forefront. I think I'm just going to keep it even and keep it 50-50 and blend them together. But I'm saying that also because I pushed 16K on her, and I could push 16K on him to get a little bit more shine out of his vocals. But because I'm pushing 16 and 16, and obviously they're not necessarily singing, you know, in the same register and the same voice type. One, you know, one's a female, one's a male. So they're going to sound different in that sense. But I need to also be aware of like, okay, well, I maybe shouldn't push 16 on both because maybe it'll get messy. Maybe the track will start to get too bright. Their vocals will get too bright. Those frequencies will try to fight for space. I'm not saying that is what's happening, but it is something to think about and deciding like, okay, who's going to get the 16K? I mean, they could both get 16K. Maybe it's just, maybe I just need to turn her down. And as far as like the amount of 16K, which I think I added, what was it? 6 dB, 4.6 or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe I need to like not add as much to both if I want to get that 16 out of both.
Break the chain.
Like if I did both, like let's say I did 10. Let's just exaggerate it.
Break the chain.
Never break the chain.
Break the chain. Break the chain.
Never break.
Oops.
Break the chain.
Never break the chain.
So it's like obviously they're two different performers and two different people, but that's a lot of 16K, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because they are singing slightly in different sections or different parts right now.
Break the chain.
I don't know. That's just a lot of 16K that you're sending to someone's ear and to your own ear, whatever. So, you know, it's just little things to think about. It's not necessarily true or anything like that, but I don't know. Those are things I always think about where I'm just like, how can I just make use of the frequency spectrum and imagining what the speaker is you know, is someone listening to an iPhone, because iPhone can only handle so much before they start breaking up. So it's just like you don't want to add too much of a lot of a frequency just because it sounds good. I don't know. Maybe that's not making sense, but that's the way I think about it.
Break the chain.
Never break the chain.
Break the
Break. Never
Like you can even hear on
break.
Never, like she even has a little bit of low end woofy thing. Like let's see.
Never
Like right here, you can hear it and you can see it.
never break.
But it's just something to be aware of. I'm not going to take it out, but it is something to be aware of.
And if you don't love me now,
almost use the same EQ for him.
And if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, never break.
But except that never.
And if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, never break the chain.
So instead of using a static EQ, so just a standard EQ, and having that frequency always cut out, I'm going to use a dynamic, which is why I like to use dynamic, because I only want it to happen when that frequency comes in.
And if, and if, and if,
So really, we're listening to this, that.
and if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, never break the chain. If you don't love me now, you'll never love.
So also another thing too, I just realized is that I forgot to bring this up as I was explaining Cassie's vocals, that I didn't use the PSP saturator because I felt like her performance was already on the brittle side. I like to use the PSP saturator in general, but I do like the top end on it, and that's what I usually use this plugin the most for. At least I have been recently. I just feel like, the vocals don't need saturation or anything like that. So I did skip the PSP saturator, but usually I would use this for any kind of top end, or like I said, more saturation. But in this case, it was already, airy enough and gritty enough where I'm just like, I don't need another layer of that. But I forgot to mention that as I'm like looking at the chain. So I don't think I'm going to use it on either. I think there's a lot of harmonics that were used in the vocal chain already, and just their vocals and stuff. But I definitely don't think it needs any more. And if it does, I can always pop it back in. But for now, I don't think it needs it.
And if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, never break the chain.
Never break the chain. You don't love me now. I can still hear you saying, you will never break the chain. Never break the chain. If you don't love me now.
So here's a good example of the Shadow Hills.
Keep us together.
So yeah, he has a lot of top end right now. So we'll handle that in a second.
Together, run in the shadows. Chain, keep us together. Run in the shadows. Chain, together, run in the shadows. Chain, keep us together. Run in the shadows. Chain, keep us together. Running in the shadows.
So like I said, it's just like another way for me to ensure that these are being treated the same, if that makes sense. It's a little bit different. I guess it's still not a good example because they're not. It's just like if these were layered on top of each other, then it would make more sense. But yeah. So I don't know. I hopefully that doesn't. Hopefully that makes sense. What I'm trying to say. I just want to make sure that I'm explaining that compressor as best as I can. But
And if you don't love
I'm gonna come down on his top end because at the end right here it gets a little bit too crispy.
chain, keep us together.
Keep it there, one.
Run in the shadows. Chain, keep us together. Run.
All right, now let's bring in his double.
And if you don't love me now, never.
And like I said,
love
we
me
know what his
again.
S's sound like, so we can bring that back down.
Still hear you saying, never break the chain. If you don't love me now, you'll never love me again.
I can still hear you saying, you will never break the chain. Never break the chain. If you don't love me now.
Nah, this is more of a creative thing, but what might be cool is because they're pretty much performing the same exact thing through the song. What if I just put her on the left and then him on the right?
And if you don't love me now,
You will never love me again. I can still hear you saying, you will never
break the chain.
never
See what this ending sounds like. It might sound crazy.
Keep us together.
So now we have a better picture on how loud this guitar can be because we have vocals now. Oops, crash. Crash again, okay. Word. I think keeping it hard left and right, I think makes more sense now that I'm getting the rest of now that I have the rest of the song in.
Keep us together. Keep us together. Keep us together.
So I like to have the Kirchhoff EQ ready to go on. Same thing on BGVs. I want to EQ and compress doubles and backgrounds similar to the lead vocals, where I want to make sure they're both feeding into the same EQ and compressor at the same time.
Keep us together. Keep us together.
So we'll kind of do that.
Keep us together. Keep us together.
And then I like to use the EMT for doubles and BGVs.
Keep us together. Keep us together. Keep us together. Keep us. Keep us together. Keep us together. Keep us together.
You know, if I wanted to get really crazy, like maybe I would have some sort of panning happening on this where it's going back and forth. That's just more of a creative thing that I would do. But yeah, just something to think about. Those are things that I'm like thinking about as I'm mixing them. Like, how can I make this more interesting and exciting?